This is the Scary Movie Clubcast.
Hey, live from the Clubhouse, it's the Scary Movie Clubcast. This is Nadine, and tonight we watched the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and we loved it. We're gonna go around the circle and give you guys our reviews. I personally thought it was like one of the best. I saw it twice in theater, which is a big deal because I'm super cheap. So I paid to see it twice and paid for my mom to see it once. And then we watched it together. That was my third time seeing it. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. 5 out of 5 marks.
Yes, this is Amanda. Also loved it. Just love Leonardo DiCaprio. He's like my baby. And yeah, definitely 5 out of 5 overflowing pictures of marks.
Mm-hmm. This is Mackenzie. I'm a not for anything Charles Manson themed or related. I love him unapologetically.
Our little Manson girl.
Yeah. I am a Manson girl. So I'd give it 5 out of 5 marks.
This is Megan. Movie was spectacular. It was everything that I could want in a movie. The scene where Leonardo DiCaprio was yelling at himself in the trailer was iconic.
Improv, by the way, in case you didn't know it and you're listening.
So iconic.
So good.
5 out of 5 endless marks.
Yes, it is endless mark night tonight.
Endless marks.
Bottomless pictures of marks.
We also loved the little girl like crazy.
Oh,
She was
so
cute.
Yeah, we could go on and on, but we won't, because we have a very special cast for you guys tonight. What we've done is we have split into teams. Amanda and I teamed up, and Megan and Mackenzie teamed up. What we did is we each picked an urban legend, and we researched it together in our teams, and now we're going to come together and tell you about the urban legends that we have researched. Amanda's going to start us out.
Yay.
There it is again. What is that thing? I can't take this anymore. It's like everywhere I go, all I see is this tall, seemingly faceless creature. It's been following me and haunting my dreams ever since I first saw it. All it does is stand there and watch me. I constantly feel like I'm being watched. I hate it. I can't sleep. I can't go outside. I can't function as a normal person anymore. That was the beginning of the creepypasta Slender Man ? By Josh Dean. We made a bit of edited abridged version to make it more family friendly and just a bit more polished. The Slender Man, to give you a brief description of him, he's a modern myth. He was extremely tall. Well, he's described as being extremely tall, abnormally long limbs, man-shaped, sometimes seen with tentacles.
Wish there were more boys like that.
Get him! Appears to be wearing a dark suit and has a white featureless face. Slender Man typically what?
Morph suit.
Yes, so
A tall guy in a morph suit, basically.
yeah, pretty much. Get some stilts, morph suit, you're done.
You're Slender Man.
The Slender Man is found in the woods, usually near a residential area. Not much of known is about how he chooses his victims. All that we know is that... Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, my slideshow.
Man, it's got a PowerPoint for us. We'll try to attach it somewhere in case you guys want to look at it.
This is the picture of the Slender Man.
His natural habitat.
Like a spider.
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Spoder-Man.
Tendrils.
Yeah, so not much is known about how he chooses his victims. It's kind of like once you start hearing about the Slender Man is when he starts coming for you. And the more you look into him, the more you try to find out, the worse it is.
So you guys are screwed.
You can't summon him, but
Well, and
the more you
they've
learn
now
about it.
trapped us into their...
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's like a
rude.
chain letter in that way. It's like once you learn about it, you send it on to other people, and that's how the Slender goes.
Gonna do
But
us
guess
dirty
what?
like that?
You don't have to stress. It's fake!
What?
Nadine! Spoiler.
Anyway, but it's also similar to this paranormal phenomena thing called a tulpa, which is like a thought monster. So it's a creature or ghost or paranormal phenomenon that you think into creation. Like, the more you think about it, the more real it becomes, and the more other people, like, the more the world thinks about it, the more material it becomes, is the idea of a tulpa.
Monster version of a poltergeist.
Oh.
And those who've seen Slender Man tend to suffer for something called slender sickness. Slender sickness are typically paranoia, nightmares, delusions, sometimes nosebleeds, blackouts, and, like, the loss of time. and sometimes a bad cop. These are featured pretty heavily in the YouTube series Marble Hornets. Slender Man also causes interferences with electrical equipment, specifically video and audio recordings.
Well, and what's interesting too about Slender Man is that, like, it kind of depends who is talking about him as to which of these powers he has and doesn't have. Like, in some of the creepypastas, it'll be like, he can teleport, or he's a mind reader, and in other ones, it's like...
He is super villain.
Yes, totally different. Sometimes he has good intentions, try to save and rescue little children. Other times he's murder.
He is Murder Man.
The way to know you're in the Slender Man's crosshairs is that you feel compelled to, or you are plagued by these crude drawings of the Slender Man. They tend to include pictures of Slender Man, his symbol, which is a circle with an X through it. Some stories include human helpers, known as proxies, who assist Slender Man in his bidding. Those haunted by the Slender Man tend to go missing and are never seen or heard from again. Jumping back into the end of our story by Josh. Getting into character. I'm paranoid. I'm scared. I can see the outline of a man forming in the corner. A really tall, thin man. It looks like he's wearing a suit. Oh no, it's him. He's here. Just like in my dream. He lifts his arm and stretches across the room over my head. He rests his hands on my forehead. I thought about grabbing his arm and trying to push it away, or getting up out of bed and trying to break down the door, but something told me there's no use. Then these tendrils came from behind him and wrapped around my entire body. Before I could scream, it reached my face and covered my mouth. As it enveloped my head, the last thing to be covered was my eyes, which had been shut. I decided to open them. I looked directly up, and he was there, standing over me, looking down. He was the last thing I ever saw. Although he has no face, I swear, he seemed to smile. A little bit about the history of Slender Man is, interesting thing about him is he's a modern myth, so we know exactly when he came into existence. He was born June 10th, 2009. As part of a photo editing contest on the Something Awful forums by Eric Knudsen, Silent K, also known as Victor Surge, which is his pen name that he used. So there are two photos he submitted. One is of this little girl. She's just climbing up on a slide. There's a bunch of little kids in this part. And then in the very background, there's this tall man with what looks like tentacles and little kids surrounding him. Very eerie. And this is what the caption for that photo reads. It's one of two recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken the day which 14 children vanished, and for what is referred to as the Slender Man. That's the history of the Slender Man.
Yeah, so this blew up on May 31st, 2014. Three 12-year-old girls, Anissa Wire, Morgan Geyser, and Bella Peyton Lautner, which her name is Peyton, but she went by Bella. They had a birthday party for Morgan the night before. They went skating. They slept over at her house. Fun 12-year-old girl stuff, you know. And then they're going to the park. It's going to be a great day. Twist. Morgan and Anissa have been planning to kill Bella for months.
Bum, bum, bum!
Yes.
Yeah.
They started planning this murder in February. So they get to the park and they go into the bathroom. Anissa decides that she's going to like hit Peyton's head into the wall to try to knock her out, because the stuff that she's read on the internet says that it's easier to kill someone if their eyes are shut, so that you don't have to see your reflection in their eyes, so it's not like you're killing yourself. And so she just like slams Peyton's head into the wall, and it doesn't work. It doesn't knock her out. She's just like confused about what just happened. And then Morgan tries to give Anissa the knife because it was planned that Anissa would be the one to murder Bella. Anissa's like, I'm too scared, you're gonna have to be the one to do it. So then they tell Bella that they're gonna play hide and seek. Bella doesn't want to play, she's not interested, but they're like, no, we're gonna do this and then you can pick what we do after that. Anissa takes Bella into the woods while Morgan counts. Morgan has the knife on her at this point. It's like a 5-inch kitchen blade. She counts, and then Anissa's in there, and she made Bella get on the ground and, like, covered her up with, like, leaves and twigs and stuff, and even, like, got on top of her at one point. Morgan comes to where she is, and Morgan's like, I'm not gonna do it unless you tell me to do it. and Anissa walks like 10 feet away and then is like, go crazy, go berserk. And Morgan stabs Bella 19 times, like jumps on top of her, gets very close to her face and is like, I'm sorry, and then stabs her 19 times.
So
You're not
crazy.
sorry.
How did she describe it? Tell us.
Such a story.
Then Anissa comes over and like they pull her away and Anissa says, all right, we're gonna go get help. Don't move too much or else you'll lose too much blood and you'll die. They have no intention of going to get help.
Right.
No.
Their plan, they're 12-year-old girls, so even though they've plotted out this murder,
It's
let's
not
get a little
good.
contrast. Their plan now is to walk 300 miles.
Doable.
Can't do it.
Doable.
To Nicollet National Park, where they believe that that Slender Man's mansion is, and that they are going to go and live with him as his proxies, because now they've done this murder for him.
Yeah, that's something that appears more in the other creepypastas, is that Slender Man has his mansion and he has all these proxies who do his bidding. Some of that stuff gets real freaky deaky, you know what I'm saying?
Luckily, Bella didn't believe them and tried her best to like edge her way towards the bike path. Someone biking home finds her, this man. She immediately from the get-go is like, my best friend did this to me. They're looking for these girls. They were walking for 5 hours. Do we want to take guesses of how far they got in their 300-mile
I
journey?
think they
Yes,
maybe
yes,
got 8 miles.
15.
5.
No, they didn't go 5 miles!
Was
they
that
didn't.
5
They
hours?
did! And it was 5 hours! And literally, when they're in the police place, Anissa, who is the worst, is standing there and, like, one of the first things that she says to the detective people is, do you know how far we walked? Because I'm not usually very athletic, but it felt like we went so far.
I mean, how do you only make it 5 miles unless you're sitting down a lot?
Oh, they were. Which they also had a breakdown point, because at one point, Anissa breaks down and blames everything on Morgan, and then Morgan starts to cry and says that Slender Man told her that if they didn't do this, that he was going to kill their families, and that's why they had to do it. And it becomes very important later in the court case that Anissa is the one who tells this to the police. Morgan isn't the one who tells that story. Anissa says, I broke down, and then she broke down, and that's what she said, and Morgan isn't one to cry, and blah, blah, blah. And it's very important because Anissa then says, I didn't know that we were in any danger until we had already done it. She literally, like, says that phrase, pretty much. And they end up being charged as adults, which was, like, a big decision to make. They both enter insanity pleas. Morgan is schizophrenic, and it's extremely early onset, like, crazy
So
rare.
Rare.
Yeah, so rare.
Yeah, because it usually presents in, like, your 20s?
20s, yeah, because that's when you start to get, like, the stress of, like, real life is, like,
Yeah.
18, 19, 20, and you're, like, an adult, and it's like, oh, pass.
And
And so
then
your
have
mind
your
just,
break.
yeah. And she had her first hallucination when she was 3 years old. It's, like, wild. It's so rare. Like, it was so rare that when I first heard it, I was like, no. I was like, lies. I was like, let me see how you guys were lying about this. But no, the more that I researched it, the more that I was like, oh my gosh, this girl has this. Because in the, like, videos when she's talking to the police, they'll leave the room for a little bit, and she'll be talking, like, to no one. And her mom said that she believed in Santa till she was 11, so she, like, just latches onto things and believes that
she
they're
probably
real. And
saw Santa. You know what I'm saying?
it turns out that her dad also is a schizophrenic, and they didn't tell her because she was so young, and they didn't really...
Why would you? Yeah.
I would, personally. Like, I mean, 12 is old to me, personally.
I think
but
that's when you start to consider telling, because, I mean, it's not until then that they'd even consider,
personally.
that they'd even understand what that even was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for me, it'd be more like 8, if even that old. Because I would never want my child to find out some other way. 12-year-olds know so much. Like, they're going to school in middle school with older kids. I just wouldn't want my kid to, like, come across the medication in the cabinet, because kids also be nosy, and they just be going through your stuff for no reason, and be like, and Google it, and then be like, oh, my dad's a schizophrenic. They never told me. I wouldn't want that. So I would tell my kid early.
I mean, I guess it's different. I mean, her parents are a bit older than we are, presumably, and so they grew up before we did, definitely before their kids did, so they're not used to, like, this easy access to the internet, because kids grow up faster now,
Right.
and they learn more a lot faster than we ever did, or at least I ever did.
Especially
for
the
sure.
parents would have had.
Definitely wasn't Googling things
Yeah.
at 12.
But so Morgan enters that insanity plea because she is actually, like, mentally incompetent in this case. Anissa, they enter an insanity plea for her, and they say that she has Slender Man delusion. Like...
here we go with naming things after Slender Man for no reason.
And it was like...
Slender sickness, slender delusion.
Basically, they said that, like, because of the friendship, that it created this, like, perfect storm for this to happen, and it's essentially crap. And so 10 out of 12 jurors agreed that because that the mental disorder prevented her from knowing her conduct was wrong, which I don't believe personally. Like, if I were a juror, I would have voted the other way, because I think that even if you give in to the fact that, like, oh, okay, it was a delusion, she still premeditated this only in her mind for the benefit of becoming his proxy and then continuing to do these sorts of things. Yeah. Not, like she said in her interview, she wasn't scared. She didn't think that he was, like, after her in that way. So, to me, it was just, you were a murderer in the making. Like, no. One of the other creepy things, while they're being interviewed, is that Morgan is like, is she alive? And the detective is like, I don't know. She was taken to the hospital. And when he says that, she was looking down, and she just, like, looks up. Like, she's clearly surprised by that information. Not, like, happy, surprised, or relieved, but she was like, I was just wondering. But her head shoots up. It's, like, creepy. And then if that wasn't bad enough, the way Anissa asked is, she's like, where's Bella's body now? And the person was like, at the hospital? And she's like, oh, I thought it would still be at the crime scene.
No.
And the person goes, did you think she died? And she was like, yeah. And the person was like,
and it's
she's
clearly
alive.
evident that she sees this as a crime. She knows it's wrong.
Exactly. I mean, they wanted her to die. And they, like, I don't think that Morgan fully understood what was happening or what she was doing, but I do think that Anissa, as well as a 12-year-old, could understand. Like, given she was only 12. Like, I don't want to totally discount that, but I think as well as a 12-year-old could understand. She did understand.
So, Mackenzie and I, we researched the Black-Eyed Children, or the Black-Eyed Kids.
Have you guys ever heard of the Black-Eyed Kids?
Never in my life.
I know, it was so hard to not research. Because once you guys picked this, and then I couldn't research it until you guys told me about it, it was so hard.
They are not related to the Black-Eyed Peas.
Oh, what?
I know.
That was my first guess.
Yeah.
I know.
They're not their children.
The urban legend of the Black-Eyed Pea.
Some say they
Don't lie.
No, baby. No.
So, history of the Black-Eyed Children. The first reported story of the Black-Eyed Children dates back to 1996. Brian Bethel had his experience in Abilene, Texas, and the experience that he wrote down was that he had gone to go pay his internet provider. He was going to just, like, drop off a check in their Dropbox. So he had gotten to the parking lot, and the Dropbox was right next to a movie theater, so he was using the light from the movie theater to write his check. And while he was in the car writing his check, these two boys came up and knocked on his window, and they were asking for a ride to their mom's house so that they could get some money so that they could go see the movie that was showing at the movie theater. And so he describes them as being between the ages of 9 to 12. So he, like, cracks the window, and, like, they start talking, and he immediately has this, like, gut-wrenching fear, but he has no idea why, because, I mean, they're, like, 9, 12-year-old boys.
Oh, too many 12-year-olds.
But it's like, he has no reason to fear these children, but he just, like, has this all-consuming fear that he can't reason.
Like, justify.
Yeah, exactly. And so he talks to them. He says that they kept trying to reassure him, saying, oh, it won't take long. We're just two little kids. And he said the most unnerving reassurance that they gave him was, it's not like we have a gun or anything.
Oh, no.
Not reassuring at all.
I'd be like, where are your parents?
Come on in, boys.
Around that time is when he broke eye contact with him, and when he went to go look again, that is the first time he noticed that they had black eyes. So this whole time he hadn't noticed it, and when he looked away and looked back, that's when he saw them, and he described them as soulless orbs, like two great swatches of starless night.
What is this guy, an aspiring writer? Get out of town.
He's a journalist!
He is a journalist.
Not a good one.
Soulless orbs. I mean...
So he immediately puts the car in reverse. Does not look, just backs on out of that parking spot. Luckily, it was pretty, quiet night, so there was nobody else in the parking lot. And so he hightails it out. He's like, okay, bye! And just, leaves. And he said when he reached the end of the parking lot, he looked back, and they were completely gone. When there was no place, because it was, such a short period of time, there was no place they could have gone. This parking lot was basically empty. There wasn't any place they could have been hiding. So it was just super creepy experience. There was an article where someone had asked him, what are these children? So this is a quote from Brian Bethel. He says, I don't know for sure. What I do know is that they are predators and we are the food. But they do want something from us. Maybe they do just want to kill. But I tend to think the design is far more complex than that. Until you've been on the receiving end of those terrible dark eyes filled with hate and torn from the very depths of night and time, I'm not sure you can understand.
We got a liar.
Yep. He's not dramatic, you guys.
He's just telling the facts as they are.
No embellishment.
No opinions. This is...
Take his thesaurus away.
No, but the best. Okay, so I listened.
This is where it gets good.
There's a podcast where he came on, Brian Bethel, he came on and he retold his experience, answered questions. He asked him a similar question, who do you think these children are? This is Brian Bethel's answer at this time. He thinks they are interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial entities.
Stop.
Interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial.
I'm ultra-terrestrial.
Interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial entities.
Don't know what those are, but that's what they are.
But he has so much
means
experience
aliens.
with them.
Well, okay, so I'll get into my section now.
Yeah.
Good? Okay.
Yep.
So, these are some personal stories and pop culture type things. So, a common thread with all of the stories of black-eyed children is that the children are approaching a house or a car and asking, may we come in? They're always asking if they can come in. They're always not appropriately dressed, or they look like they're from a different time period. So they look like they're from ancient, Victorian type times. And
It's ancient, okay? Don't question it, Amanda.
okay, not quite Egyptian.
Loincloths.
Not freaking biblical.
They just got some fig leaves, it's fine.
Yeah, we're not talking Adam
Toads
and
and the
Eve,
ropes.
but yeah. So they're Victorian looking. When people encounter them, they have a wave of fear or a very primal fear. And then a lot of times, like Brian Bethel, people don't notice their eyes, or their eyes will appear more normal, and then when they look away and look back type of thing, that's when they notice the all black with no whites, just completely black, voidless, like a starless night.
Soulless orbs.
Soulless orbs.
I feel attached to this because of your black eyes.
Yes.
Your
That's
soulless
why
orbs.
it's my favorite, because I myself,
Kenzie's
Black
eyes
eyed
are so
children.
dark brown.
they're
It's
very
like-
dark brown. They do have white around the outside. I'm not black-eyed. I'm not. I feel attached to this urban legend because it's where I come from. I am an interdimensional ultra-terrestrial entity, so thought I'd let you guys know. So I have 2 accounts of people's interactions with black-eyed children. Are you ready?
Ready.
So the first one comes from a man named Jake, and this website I got it off of is hatchetbookgroup.com. Jake didn't believe in black-eyed children, and so
They
he
never
thought,
do.
right, silly boy.
Tempting.
Yes.
Jinx themselves.
Yes, exactly. Put himself into a trap by putting an ad on Craigslist, and he says, quote, "Black-eyed kids, I am not afraid of you. I want to meet you, 9 p.m. Wednesday. The park bench on the corner of 3rd and Washington. Show me why I'm wrong and I should be afraid."
If that's not a request for a prank, I don't know what is.
I don't know what is. You know what I'm saying? He
don't-
literally was
It
like,
was a prank.
he said, "Please screw me over. I want you to rob me.
Not a problem.
Hurt me good," is what I heard. So, every...
Papa, no.
Please, Papa, no. Papa, no. So every Wednesday, he checks this bench, because it's by his house. It's like a block away from his apartment. So he just comes by it on his way home and kind of checks out the bench to see if the black-eyed kids are there. But no one's there. There's like random teenagers, random people that are
Hooligans.
How old is he?
Yeah, hooligans.
I have no idea. Probably
Those
in his
juvenile
20s.
delinquents.
Juveniles. And so, after about 6 months, mind you, of him doing this bullshitanigan, he takes the ad down, because he has them at the Black Eyed Kids.
Yes.
And
Maybe
then,
they're not on Craigslist.
But every week for 6 months, he posts that ad and goes to that bench every Wednesday for 6
Maybe it's not like out of his.
months.
Maybe that's like his routine, and that's why he was like, "This
But
is
it's
the time
still-
and date and stuff that we'll set."
So after 6 months, he takes this ad down, and one night, a little after 9 o'clock, he hears a knock on his door. So he instantly realizes it's the Black-Eyed Kids, and so a wave of fear rushes over him. His skin turns ice cold. He's terrified, and so he answers the door, as you do. And so he says...
Always answer the door to strangers. That's what I always say.
Yes.
Answers it with his voice or with the opening.
opens the door.
No, he's a white man. Of course, he's a fool.
Yeah. So he opens it, quote, "There was a kid about 9 years old, olive skin, dark hair, solid black eyes, staring up at me. Can
Slam
I
that
come
door.
in?" is what he says. Yeah. So
Really.
he's frozen for a while in fear, and Jake says no and starts to close the door. And the kid says, "We missed you at the park tonight." And so Jake then realizes that he was being watched at the park bench.
He was being watched while he was watching.
And so he closes the door.
Twofer.
Yep. And he's terrified. And the kid continues to knock on the door. The second one, this one is buckle up, ladies.
I'm buckled.
So this is a couple in Vermont. And this comes from a website called weekinweird.com, which actually sounds like a pretty fun website I might check out later. So this couple lives in a rural town outside of Vermont. And it's one night around 2 a.m. During a snowstorm, they hear knocking on their door. So the woman wakes her husband up, as she should, because I am not going in there alone.
You know.
I mean,
And
we're not
so-
going in there at all. But wake up.
So she wakes her husband up, and they check the door and see, quote, "A boy and a girl who could not have been more than 8 years old. They were dressed strangely and had odd haircuts. The girl's hair was very long and straight, and the boy had a dated haircut that looked almost like a bowl cut. They weren't dressed for winter." So the wife thinks they might be Mennonite children, which is...
You're wrong!
We know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
you know,
she
the
says...
Mennonites.
She thinks that to herself. She thinks they're Mennonite children, but she also knows there's no Mennonite colonies around them, so she's very confused. It's also a snowstorm. The children are not making eye contact, and they ask if they can come in, and the couple feels terrified, but they are worried for them, so they let them inside.
I would too.
Yeah, that's what the lady says. She says, instinctively, I would let the children in, but I was terrified, but we still agreed to let them in.
I know, it's so tricky. Oh, it would be so hard to decide what to do because people use kids as, like, lures anyway, like, even if these weren't what they were.
Right. You mean interdimensional ultra-terrestrial entities? Or Mennonite children.
Your
Or
pick.
maybe they're just from the Village of the Damned.
They're interdimensional ultra-terrestrial entities, but...
They are.
So, mistakes were made. So the wife goes to make hot chocolate for them. She's an angel.
Yeah.
And the husband brings them into the living room.
They're
Is-
not dressed for winter.
They're not, and it's a snowstorm. The husband brings them into the living room and is asking them, are they okay? Where are they? He asks where their parents are, and they say they'll be here soon, is what they reply. Ookie spooky. And so the couple has 4 cats, and they're acting super weird. These cats that are normally very friendly and curious to see who's home, 3 of them are hiding. Don't know where it is. The last cat that's out has its hair standing up, and it's hissing and growling and freaking out. The wife goes back into the living room, and her husband has his hands in his head, kind of holding his head, and he says he's very dizzy. She looks at the children to go and give them their hot chocolate, and she notices their eyes are completely black. Just completely soulless orbs, which terrifies her, obviously. They ask, may we use the restroom? And so they get up and go together to the bathroom.
Weird.
And the husband...
It's not that weird to me. I feel like if siblings were together in, like, a strange... Like, I feel like if I was, like, 4 or 5 and I had to go to the bathroom and my brother was there and I didn't know the place, I'd be like, we're going to the bathroom.
So the husband has a nosebleed, and so the wife goes to tend to that. The children come out of the bathroom and say, our parents are here. And so they walk out of the house, leaving the door wide open.
I feel like, how do you know?
They know.
When did they call them? Never.
know,
Not
So
at
maybe
one
they were
point did
behind
make
them. Maybe it was
call.
like they're in the horse and buggy.
The Mennonites.
The Mennonites. So the couple.
We'll churn you some butter.
They're churning butter in the hallway. So the couple sees, quote, 2 men standing by a black car, idling at the end of our driveway. The men looked like they were wearing black-colored suits and were very tall, at least 6 feet. When my husband waved at them, they just stared at us, got in the car, and drove off. So over the next few months, things are not great for this couple. 3 of their cats run away.
No.
And the last one dies very violently, that I will not... I don't want to get into because it's sad. Do you want me to tell you how it died? No, it puked up blood, and they found it in its own pool of blood in their living room.
Probably poisoned.
Yeah, so it was upsetty spaghetti. The husband, at this point, is now having frequent nosebleeds. When they keep going to the doctor, they can only diagnose it as very dry nasal passages.
Yeah, that's what I would have said.
And he's also diagnosed with an aggressive
Dr.
skin
Amanda.
cancer. Yeah, so he's diagnosed with an aggressive skin cancer. The wife is experiencing dizzy spells and nosebleeds and other symptoms that she didn't disclose in her story. And so this story was called "I Let the Black-Eyed Children Into My House and Now I'm Slowly Dying," is what she titled it, actually.
I like that. That's fun.
But
That's a happy
yeah.
tale.
And so the husband is expected to recover from the cancer, but they're plagued. And so that is Black-Eyed Children for you guys. Pretty freaky spooky.
And it's also a modern legend.
A modern
Yes,
legend,
it
yeah,
is.
not an ancient one.
Alright, guys. So, thank you for listening to the podcast with us. We had super fun researching this. We'll see you next movie night. And don't forget, there are 180 days till Halloween.
Bye.
Top hat would be nice.
Yeah. My lady.
My lady.
My Slender. Papa. Papa Slender.
Oh, we're weird. Okay. Slender Man. I'm not making this up.
I know.
I just-
Mackenzie's laughing at all the victims.
No, it's just funny because it's like you just had Slender before things. Slender sickness. Slender Man. Slender people. Slender story.
Slender children.
This is a Slender pasta about a Slender
We're
Man.
going to teach you about slender proxies in a minute.
Hi.
Isn't slender pasta just angel hair food? Angel food?
Angel
hair.
food.
Angel hair. Angel hair pasta.
Angel food is the cake.
Yeah.
Angel food cake.
That would be a great meal.
Slender cake.
Angel hair pasta, then some angel food cake. I got a little time.
Slender pasta and Slender cake.
Yeah, so,
I want
I don't know, the
slender cake.
symptoms of,
Spoiler. I say nothing. It is tonight. We always podcast at night.
okay.
It is Friday the 13th.
Oh.
June 1986 is a Friday. Friday the 13th is our club anniversary.
That's pretty cool.
Those interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial entities.
Is this the joke?
Yes.
These maple syrup farmers.
Yeah, basically.
I
They
was like,
do.
oh, could go for a drink of that right now.
Oh, glass of maple syrup.
So cut everything else out, and I know we have to cut it in half, but leave that in.
Everything but maple syrup.
No, not really though.
No! Now, please.